How do we do that one? Right?
Uh, oh, are you referring to the little thing I did down
The
there?
question marks. Yeah.
Oh, well, I figured Ben absolutely owns the explanation point, and I didn't
As he
feel the
should.
I didn't feel a period or a comma would be that interesting, so I went with the question marks. And I'm sure by now a lot of your audience is like, "Who the hell is this guy?" You know.
Hey, man, it's all
So
good. They'll figure it out.
yeah. So anyway, I hope it's not a bad thing, but I put that little website down there, so if anybody had any interest at all, they could find out who I am.
Hmm.
There's some, my bio's on there and stuff like that, but I dare not use the explanation point. So, what do you think? Does the question mark work pretty good?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
mysterious.
It is. It's quite mysterious. Caroline says, "Hey guys, great to see you. Great to see you too, Caroline, as always." Ben, Rod, how's your week been? What's been going on, young men?
Well, if you'd asked me before today, I would have said pretty good.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Today, I lost I don't know, I lost access to Google Docs, and
Oh.
I was in the middle of a novel, about 180 pages in. It's about halfway, and
Uh-oh.
600 edits
Oh God.
have
All right, let
disappeared. I'm
me.
not sure where they are. I'm hoping they come back.
Oh my.
But there's
Oh.
I'm facing a novel with a lot of structural issues and storylines and repetition and
Mm,
pointless dialogue.
got
Mm.
it. Oh,
But we'll
that
work through it.
sucks. Yeah, we always do, right? We make magic happen.
Yeah.
All right, I'm resending this uh to you. So let's see if and I'm making you an editor so that hopefully that works. How about you, Rod? How's your week been?
Oh, it's been pretty good. I'm about to finish one of the novels I'm working on. The other two are coming along really well.
Hmm.
Uh, the editing is working very nicely. I've gotten some really good responses to my editing service that I started, and I'm very tickled about that. Writing, I'm actually doing it. I don't know where I'm finding the time, but that main story that I've been working on is really coming along nicely. So that's exciting. I think that's a lot of fun. And then, oh, it goes way back to like the first ever Windows. Uh, I was working as an accountant, and the
Hmm.
horror, the terror of losing all my work. Oh, Ben, I feel you. I backed
Oh yeah.
everything up. I've got it backed up on two online places, and I still use a flash drive to back up some of my files. I'm paranoid about that because, oh, I feel you. That's horrible. I
Mm-hmm.
once lost a small company's books. I don't know. I think it was about maybe May. So
Mm-hmm.
from January to May, there was no record. So of
Ooh.
course I had to go through all the paper records and redo it all. Good learning experience. Never happened again in like 35 years.
Yeah, I
No
bet.
way.
Yeah, I think it's probably happened to all of us at some point. So,
Mhm.
yep, totally understand. Margaret says, "Hey guys, hey Margaret, awesome to see you." So, uh, so for anyone who is watching and you are not familiar with us, so this is Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything, and this is your opportunity to ask the editors of Running Wild and Rise presses whatever the hell you want. We really do take basically any question unless it's something absolutely uh, mundane and it's clear you're just being a smartass. Although we do value the smartass portion, it's the potential malintent that we do not necessarily um, A, reciprocate, nor B, respond to. So,
Mhm.
again, you can ask us anything: creative writing, art of publishing, craft of publishing, the business of publishing, um,
Mhm.
about different structures, about different forums. Um, why is Ben bald? I don't know. Whatever you want. I don't care. I know it's just to look slick. That's all good.
Yeah,
I totally, yeah. He's
like I've
always
got
been
a
that way.
choice.
Yeah, there you go. Caroline says, I feel you too, Ben. Years ago, I lost all the work I had done. Yeah, seriously, I completely, yeah. And this has
Well,
happened, I think, to all of us on this Google Drive at least once. We figure it out. We always make it come back. So, but it doesn't make it any less sucky when it actually happens. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, if you guys have any questions, all you do is you pop the questions into the chat. And what happens is I will repeat the question and then we'll take turns in responding to your question. So until then, I don't know. I know, Rod, you had mentioned that you had a couple things that you'd love to cover. So I'm going to say, gentlemen, have at it. Have at it.
well, real quickly, one time I tried shaving the head thing, and I
Mm.
got so many Adams Family comments that it never happened again. I'm a little too round faced or something,
Mm.
I don't know, but I do my best to make a decent appearance. But I know what I look like, and that people will accept me for who I am. And
Yep.
besides, we all know I can't stand in the shadow of Ben.
No
I can't even stand
one
in the
can.
shadow.
No one can.
And Ben's like, "Who the hell is this guy?" But
Yeah.
yeah, I had an interesting question come to mind, and I'm sure you've covered it one time or another. But from a very individual, personal point of view, from each of you,
Mhm.
I was curious about this, and I'm going to, do my chatter thing for a second, but I'll get to the point. Since I started my own editing business, and I've been doing that, I've had some inquiries and that kind of thing. And I asked at one point that they just give me a very brief overview of the story and the first
Mhm.
20 pages. And
Mhm.
that's what I evaluate to see if I think I can do any good and be of any benefit to that author.
Mhm.
And I really go mostly on gut instincts. You know, does the overall story seem interesting? And when I read those 20 pages, can I visualize, what's going on? Is it making any sense?
Mhm.
Or am I just getting a whole bunch of sentences that don't really add up to anything?
Mhm.
And so what I'm looking for is something that I can see happening, some indication that the writer is, really cares about what they're doing. If they
Mhm.
misspelled cat, I'm a little worried, you know.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's my chatter. Now I'll get to the real point because I'm
Mhm.
sure the audience would be interested in this too. I have no idea if I'll ever qualify or be offered the opportunity to be an acquisitions editor, but I'm
Mhm.
still very curious from an individual point of view. A piece comes your way, you open it up and do your thing. What is it that
Mhm.
you're really looking for? What says to you that this piece is worth acquiring? And this one, maybe it could be, but it's not there yet. I mean, what really is it gut instincts like it is for me, or do you have some sort of procedure that you follow?
I don't know, Ben, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, it's if you start reading and it's a lot of reading up front with no hook,
Mhm.
that's usually a let's go no, because we
Mhm.
look for I look for uh, a good story, and then in addition to that, good writing. And I think if Peter was here, he would say he looks for good writing and then a good story. So, but either way,
Mm.
those two things are covered up front, and
Mhm.
it's it's a matter of if if it tries to be too cute, and
Mhm.
have a joke to try to carry through a novel, it's probably not going to work with me. If
Mm.
Yeah.
if it relies too much on somebody else's work, it's not going to
Yeah.
work for me. and
Mm.
to key off of the characters from somebody else's book. I'm just gonna give those characters a different life.
Yeah.
If that different life is worth writing about, then give them characters in that life. You don't need to borrow characters from somebody else. And
Mm-hmm.
usually you see that a lot in short stories. Short stories try to spin off of Animal Farm. I think I had that once, and
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
um,
Mm.
it it's a lot of times it's been done already. So I'll look at stuff that's been done, and that'll be my input at those meetings with the acquisition. Hey, it's been done. we,
Mm-hmm.
we we don't need to do it again. But so those type of things. But basically, it still comes down to a good story and good writing. Do the characters draw you in right away? And I know Lisa will say sometimes you got way too much backstory, and your story starts here. And I
Mm-hmm.
agree totally with her. So, but I'll turn it over and let her say that herself.
I agree with everything Ben said, and to give you a little more context, so our acquisition editors, we have two for Running Wild, Ben and Peter, and one for Rise, Cody. And what we do is we actually everyone's assigned the respective stories, and the expectation isn't that they're going to read the whole submission. It's more so they're going to read enough that they feel as though they feel confident in a decision, in making a decision, right? So whether
Mhm.
that's 5 pages or 10 pages or 1 page, whatever it may be, it's just as long as when we sit down, because so what we do is we have, now it's turning into more like twice a year, but it was quarterly. We would all sit down and meet and just go through all of the submissions. And honestly, like if it was something where I basically just ask, how do you feel about it? And if I got a thumbs up all around the room, there's really no reason to keep going, right? If I got a
Yeah.
thumbs down all around the room, there's really no reason to keep going. And if it's kind
Uh-huh.
of like a half and half, then
Mhm.
that's when we actually have a broader conversation around it. But to Ben's point, like I honestly, and this is horrid for me to say because I'm the last person who should be doing this. I should be reading the cover letter and all the whole pitch and everything else. But to Ben's point, honestly, if I read the first 5-10 pages and the writing's not there, it's clear that there's no to Ben's point, there's no hook, or that it's not getting to something, right? So
Uh-huh.
like I think we talked about this last time. What we're looking for in an opening is that there's a question that's being asked, and it could be a physical question, it could be a psychological question, it could be an emotional question, but there is something, some kind of hook that's brought forward in those first 5-10 pages. In today's society, it should be the first page, but that's not how we were all raised, right? That's not the
Mhm.
books that we all read. um I was talking to a friend over this past weekend, and I brought up Lord of the Rings, and she was like, "Oh my God, I just couldn't get into that at all. It was so fucking long. I barely got through 50 pages, and I just never, I put it down." I, on the other hand, read it because I was a teenager and I had a crush on a guy who was really into Lord of the Rings. And I knew if I actually knew this story, then he would probably talk to me, which it sort of kind of worked that way, but not really. And but that made me keep reading, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Like, I'm not,
Uh-huh.
this isn't a detriment to it, but y'all have everyone has their own reasons for moving forward and completing a story. But anyway, back to acquisition. So what we do is a lot of times, so like let's say we get to a point, we actually um for 2023, our limit was 15 to 20 stories per press that we would publish, right? So
Mhm.
when we were acquiring stories, we actually take that into consideration. So we're looking at, is it a great story, great writing? If we're not sure that it's quite getting somewhere in the first like 20, 30 pages, excuse me, then we'll go back, and oftentimes even in the acquisition session, we'll read the pitch, right?
Hmm.
And because it's like, well, is this going somewhere? Is there something to it that we can see within the pitch that hooks us? And maybe it just they didn't quite get there yet in their first draft, but the writing's really good, right? Because we can
Hmm.
guide them in the rest of it, you know.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it is part gut, it is part craft. It's
Uh-huh.
also, are they doing something that's original? Maybe it's not quite there yet, but we know, a lot of times in that case, one of us, if not multiple ones of us, will volunteer in the session to be the editor for them. And we've had a
Hmm.
few times when, for whatever reason, it was questioned. We really wanted to sit down with the author to understand what their purpose was, what their goal was of the piece,
Hmm.
before deciding on whether to accept it or not. And so we would actually have a call with them, a Zoom call, and to talk
Hmm.
through, hey, what are your thoughts on the your work? Like, why did you write it? And so far, we've only had one instance where we didn't take it, but honestly, um, it was kind of strange. He wanted us to write a comic book, and we've never done that before.
Uh-huh.
And he was at first rather adamant that it was us to do it. And then when we reached out and said, well, okay, can we have a Zoom call to kind of talk through this? He disappeared. So it was like, okay, I don't that was very strange, but all right, whatever makes you happy kind of thing. So, um but yeah, it's a little bit of everything. And honestly, again, for us, just because, I mean, Rod, you're looking at this from a, you're, you have an editing service, right?
Hmm.
So you're looking at it a little bit differently, because you're not looking at, do I think this is going to sell, and is this
Yeah.
something that we're going to be able to back up in terms of publishing, right? um
Yeah.
you're looking at it from a, does this have potential to be published by, a larger press? So,
Hmm.
you know, slightly different slant on it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's the basics of it. Gut,
Hmm.
craft, narrative, and then, does is this something that we think might do well? So,
Yeah, you
Ben,
bring
do
up
you
a
want
really
to?
good point. I'm
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead. No, no, you
But
were.
you bring up a really good point in the different perspectives because, I'll hear the overall story, briefly described, and I'll read the first 20 pages. And the first question that comes to mind is, does this grab me? Like Ben said, is there something happening here that I find interesting? And then the second question that comes to my mind from my little perspective, can I do this story any benefit? Some
Mm,
stories are beyond me. I don't understand them,
mm-hmm,
or maybe it's something written by someone with 50 times my vocabulary and I don't understand half the sentences I'm reading. you know
mm-hmm,
it's not necessarily the author that's not quite getting it done. I think I'm a decent editor, okay,
mm-hmm,
but I'm not going to say, yeah, I'm always right and the writers are full. I'm never going to say that because Ben reminds me unintentionally all the time just how small I am. And I will do my very, very best for an author. You both know I'll reach out to people that know more than I do. I will do my best, but I am asking myself at that point, not is this story good enough, but can I be a benefit to this writer? And I
mm-hmm,
have turned down stories because I didn't feel I could be a benefit. Now, if I turn down a story, of course, I recommend another editor. But for me, I don't want to get involved in someone's baby, someone's 2 years of writing effort,
Hmm.
and I come up short and I let them down. I don't want that to happen, you know.
Yeah.
And I do everything I can to avoid that. But then, and I am so sorry I use so many words, but what you
Huh?
said is so valid that, you know, for me it's all about, helping them get their story done.
Hmm.
You do that, but then you've got this huge burden of trying to decide, is it a marketable story? Is it a story that you feel like, I mean, almost anybody, not anybody, but almost anybody can pluck a book on Amazon's wall with a million other books that nobody has any idea that your book is there. Almost anybody can do that, but you have the task, the burden of deciding, is this story something that we can promote and send through our, distributors and all these other things that you have to deal with. That certainly
Hmm.
does give a whole different perspective. I mean, I don't understand everything you do, but boy, I can see the difference. You do carry quite a burden as an acquisitions editor, huh?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think it's an honor, right? And when
Yeah.
we first started, it was, well, when we first started, it was me and actually a dear friend, who decided after the first year, she was like, "This is too much for me. You're welcome to keep going." And then we put out the short story anthology and a novella anthology, and that's how Ben and Peter and I found each other. And I realized when I was working with both of them that they were both quite skilled in the editorial process as well. And so that's what got me
Mhm.
to say, you know what, hey, would you guys want to join me as editors in this?
Uh-huh.
But when we first started, actually, we didn't care about whether it was sellable or not. We just said, "This is a great effing story. Like, bring it on. We need to publish this." And, and when I say that, I mean that around it could have been a memoir or a novel or a short story or anthology. It didn't matter. We would read it, and if we said, "Wow, that's pretty killer. Like this needs to be in readers' hands." We were quite ballsy, and we just said, "Screw it. Yeah, let's do it."
Uh-huh.
And then we found out, I'd say pretty relatively quickly, that well, if uh, just because it's a great story doesn't mean people are going to pick it up, right? Especially
Mhm.
in today's market, so much of this is dependent on marketing and publicity that, unless that story, no matter the forum, gets enough promo out there, then,
Mhm.
I mean, we've had authors, and I'm being probably way too candid. And I won't name names because I don't want anyone seeking me out and trying to kill me. But hey, whatever. It happens anyway, so why not? Um,
Mhm.
you know, they, in my opinion, they should have won massive awards and sold in the millions. And we've had cases where um, it people actually returned the promo paperbacks, so it actually ended up selling in negative numbers. And
Wow.
so, and I'm talking, and now what kills me is, I mean, these are stories too that, from a review perspective, they got
Mhm.
starred reviews from like Kirkus and Publishers Weekly, right?
Mhm.
So this wasn't just like, Ben and I going on Goodreads and giving him, 5 stars. I'm talking about like professional reviews read them and went,
Mhm.
"Wow, this is awesome. Yeah, this is a great story." And, it was lucky if it sold 5 books. And,
Wow.
that's really indicative of today's society where it is so dependent on marketing and promotion. And I think a lot of times when we talk about that, sometimes authors, especially new authors, may misunderstand that and think, "Oh, that means the press is supposed to be running, commercials on TV, and that's how I'm going to be known." And but the reality is that a lot of the authors that you see today, they did their own promo. Like,
Mhm.
they went out and they hired a publicist, or they made sure that they had a decent following on social media, and they researched how to do great marketing and great publicity, and they worked their asses off, right?
Yeah.
And, again, their first or second book may not have sold in the thousands, but they saw enough uplift between, from the first book to the second book to the third book that, they got a bigger and bigger following. But
Hmm.
I honestly think it's an honor to be able to for us to publish stories and for us to get the word out. It's just that unfortunately, I'd say in the first year, we found out pretty well, 2 years I'd say when you look at the numbers, we realized pretty fast that okay, now we have to really also look at this, make it a balance, right? Of
Hmm.
is this something that people are gonna may pick up on their own, right? Or that a retailer is going to look at the synopsis or look at the pitch and
Hmm.
say, "Oh yeah, that's similar to Harry Potter. Of course we're going to pick it up, right?" Or that's similar to whatever, right? Or,
Yeah.
"Oh, you know, this has a recommendation by J.K. Rowling on it. Well, hell yeah, Oprah recommends this book. Hell yeah, we're picking
Hmm.
this up, right?" Unfortunately, those we have to take all that into consideration,
Yeah.
especially for full length. Now, admittedly, I say all that, and I'm sorry that this is so long. Um, Admittedly, we don't do that for short stories and novellas, and I feel safe to say that since I'm the editor for novellas, and Ben's the editor for short story anthologies. In those cases, we still do say, is this a great story? And if
Mhm.
so, then we pick it up. We don't, it's not, it is more so based on can this person tell a great story and are they a great writer? I
Mhm.
don't know, Ben, do you have a
Well,
different perspective?
the stories are even you look for that story of does it matter what happens to these characters and what they do and how
Hmm.
they do it and what the intent of the story is and looking for where does the author want this story to take me as a reader. And
Mhm.
once I have that mindset, I can edit better, knowing that I'm editing as a reader, and I haven't put it down yet. And that's a good thing, and
Hmm.
because you don't want that reader to get mad at you and put the book down. And that's how I got 600 edits and 180 pages with the with the novel that disappeared today. But it
Oh,
was it
ah,
was just that kind of thing. You don't want that reader mad at you. And
Yeah.
to go back to you as an editing service, you have to be careful that the author is not submitting it to you thinking that it's polished and they're looking for validation of what they think. Because
Yeah.
hmm,
anything you disagree with, they have to be open to.
Hmm.
And so that's the author's responsibility. And sometimes we'll see that with well, we've heard that. This was an author told Peter,
yeah,
this is it was listed on the top 10. And Peter's answer was, well, let me work with it and you'll get it to the top 5. And
hmm,
which was a great reply. But,
Yeah.
so the author has to be honest with themselves too. And that's my own experience. If I submitted, and it got picked up, it was an e-novel, they got picked up for publication. And I knew there was a very weak scene in it. And the
hmm,
editor caught it and I said, "Thank you for catching it. You have forced me to fix it, and I can fix it." But because there's going to be some scenes that lose energy that you have to fix, and you just have to be honest with you. The authors know. The authors
Hmm.
know.
hmm,
And but and back to the acquisitions though, we'll see since those first 2 years we have become more selective and or more highly selective of what we look for, and
hmm,
and we'll see trends like with memoirs. There was one year where we had nothing but memoirs. It seemed like,
yeah,
and we look for the twist. Well, you're telling your story. What's the connection to the human experience? And
Hmm.
hmm,
I'll use something is better than nothing as an example.
hmm,
That was a story about a soldier coming home from the Middle East and in Afghanistan, and but it was not his story. It was his wife's story, And that
Mhm.
was the twist
Oh,
we needed. That was the
Mhm.
twist. This is not just a coming home from war story from the soldier's point of view. This is the receiver at the other end saying, "This is what I had to go through."
hmm
And
Mhm.
it was, of course, again, it was very well written and a good story that drew you into the family. And
Mhm.
so we look for those type of things. And but if there for a while we were getting a lot of World War II Nazi stories or novels,
Yeah.
and
That was
hmm
those have
weird.
been done. They have been done from Schindler's List all the way back to Inglorious Bastards or whatever. It
yeah,
has
yeah.
been
Mhm.
done, and so there has to be that personal human experience hook into the story and the characters for me,
hmm
and
Yeah.
to say, yeah, let's go with this one. I'll be glad to edit this one,
hmm
and just finished Wretched, which was part of that novel was set in World War II Europe. So
Mm.
it's, and then we had the Kurt Barbie story, which was a series of stories that collected into a novel, which is another technique. It wasn't just the linear. This is what happened in a sequence. It was flashes
Mhm.
here, there, and over there. But when they came together, it was a great book because it told
Oh,
the whole story from different perspectives.
And honestly, for those who are writers, but you don't have a lot of time, that technique of structuring it as multiple short stories that are linked, that's actually a really great technique for you to leverage. And I definitely recommend going out and checking out others who've done it because it once upon a time that was it was considered really unusual. Now it's been done so many times, that you've got plenty of experts that you can go back to and read their what they've already done. But yeah, if and honestly, as a reader, it's also fabulous because you feel some form of completion when you're done that chapter, but you also know you've got a lot to look forward to with the rest of the arc that's going to come through in the subsequent chapters and short stories. So, yeah. Uh, we've got a bunch of questions if that's okay, Rod. Let's go through those and then we'll come back if that's okay.
sure.
So Caroline says the Paris Review. Did any of you read them as they came out, especially the ones that George Plimpton edited? Of course I did. I was a huge Paris Review geek because when I first started writing creative fiction, that's when I mean, that at the time was considered like that's where you go to. So I don't know, Ben,
hmm
Rod, have you guys ever read Paris Review?
No.
No, I was a Alfred Hitchcock mystery magazine guy.
Well, I mean, I did that too. I kind of did. If it sounded sexy, I was like, I'm in. So anyway, and then Caroline says, I asked that question as I find looking at other authors great to teach you something about structure, all the things you speak of that you look at in a story in a book. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, and not that I don't I feel like I learned a lot from my MFA, from all the writing workshops I went to, and the conferences, and all the phenomenal authors I had the opportunity to sit down with. And but I feel like you really learn the most by seeking out those stories that you find you get really engaged in, and then figuring out what engaged me, what about this made me say holy crap, that was amazing, right? Or
hmm
if there was a twist to it, how did they get that by me? And I'm on page, 285 of 300, and I'm like, what the hell, right? But not a what the hell of like that came out of nowhere, or what the hell of how come I didn't figure that out? Like that this is pretty wicked. So,
hmm
Teja says, Lisa, what is the procedure for someone who has written a fantasy story on Lord of the Rings or at like Harry Potter level, like stories with good world building? What's the procedure? I'm not I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question. If it's like what's your how do you approach writing a story that has a lot of world building in it? I would suggest honestly, go and look for your favorite authors who write epic fantasy or write, basically epic stories, and look for interviews with them to find out how they approached it, because everybody has their own take. You know, so like for me, and poor Ben had to live through this. Like when I'm writing more something that it requires a lot of world building, I'm actually basing it on historical figures, because that way it feels more real, and it's more, you get engaged in it a lot more. But not everybody has that approach. And so yeah, I do a ton of research, and I really expand on that. So I'd say, yeah, just go and um look up interviews with your favorite guys. um
And the
oh, and
and the
oh,
one key to pull that off is to make sure that as you build that world, your characters don't shift personalities, and even as
mm,
they grow and they find different things out, have their responses be natural to them. And
mhm.
again, go back to Lisa's cure. It's very good because the characters are finding stuff out that, yikes, how would I respond? But they say it's very natural response. He said, that's I'm dreaming this. I'm not going to go with it. But then they find out more and more, and they grow, and
Mhm.
that's a skill in itself. So as a procedural aspect of the characters going through the world that is being built around them from the world they were in to a desired or to another state, not maybe not a desired state. I'm a wolf now. Great.
Oh shit, how'd that happen? I didn't want that. And and one thing, actually, some friends of mine who do write epic stories, whether it be fantasy or thrillers or have you, have your folder on your laptop of links to everything and its mother that you use to research, or like where, any articles that you picked up, or and then have a file that's your notes of like, what are the rules of this world. And I know that may sound trite, but especially as you're writing, a lot of times your brain comes up with new rules for this world. Like, so in Cure, sorry, spoiler, I have characters who are both immortal and also who are more like Dr. Oh God, I hate when my brain does this, but they kind of live forever, but it's more like they're reincarnated, but they still have all their memories from the past life. Um, and of course, I was a huge fan of this TV show. It's British. Anyway, and I won't remember this now. But like, you need to remember that these are certain rules that you have these types of characters in your story. A, so that you don't break those rules as you move forward, or B, if you do, you can justify it, right? And also so you can leverage them in the future, because what a cool concept to have, a character that basically reincarnates into a new body and is Doctor Who. Duh. I can't believe I couldn't remember the freaking word who. Anyway, yeah, I love Doctor Who. And by the way, the series is still going on, just as a FYI. Um, but having those kinds, you can then leverage that in future stories. So you know, um, it's really, definitely have your notebook ready with stuff like that. Same thing if you're writing anything that you feel like it could have a subsequent, like a follow-up book or follow-up stories, even if it's not some kind of epic. If it's something that's more complex in terms of story or in the world that you wrote it in, definitely have keep those notes so you don't get lost in the future. That's a great question, Teha. Thank you for bringing that forward. I don't know, Ben, Rod, do you guys have anything you want to add?
Well, I would say on the grand scope stories, the Tolkien style world building, something that big and that grand. I would say, especially to a new writer, if you're setting out to write something along those lines, and you're going to have all that world building. I think that you should probably have, and this is just my 2 cents, uh, pretty generic answer, but I think it's really worthwhile. And that is that the larger your grand scope is, the more important it is that you focus on your characters and make your characters strong and compelling. Because, you walk through a world with yellow trees and two-headed bunnies, and that's fascinating in the first 3 pages. By the time you get to page 75, that begins to get pretty boring. The thing that's
Mm,
going to change that in any story, I think, really, is if your character, strong, weak, good, bad, lovable character, or Thomas Covenant, the protagonist you don't like at all, but you can't stand to put the book down, you know.
mm,
But that character is, character driven story, plot driven story. But in the big grand scope story, I think it becomes even more important that your protagonist be very well defined and have some sort of a very interesting hook that your reader says, okay, I don't mind walking 200 miles through this landscape with this person. This will be
mhm,
cool. I can do the next 200 pages, you know? And, but if you got a dead, bland character, I don't think they're going to see page 100. And again, this is
mhm.
my gut, but that's how I feel about it.
What do you
Yeah, well,
think, Ben?
and it's looking at the Lord of the Rings, or going back to the Hobbit.
Mm,
Bilbo Baggins changed, and he was
yep.
very comfortable in his hole. It wasn't a
Uh-huh.
dirty hole; it was a Hobbit hole.
Yeah.
And but he went there and back again. And when he got back, he wasn't comfortable in that hole anymore. He wanted to go live with the elves,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and because he had seen the world, and he knew that the the Hobbit hole wasn't necessarily the place for him anymore. But if it hadn't been for that journey or the changes along that journey that we went with him, we read it, we went with him, and we fought the spiders and the trolls and everything else as a
Mhm.
Mhm.
burrow hobbit, and we experienced the change with him. And that's the key to pull readers into your book. Like Rod's saying, you got to pull and take them along the journey, and they got to be interested in the journey. What's
Mhm.
what's
Mhm.
coming around the corner next. And
Mhm.
even with Tolkien, with the ring that had the power of invisibility, he didn't come up with that. But
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
now, if you think about the ring that provides invisibility, you think Lord of the Rings, and
Yeah.
and
That's
he
right.
made it his own with his own characters and his own story.
Mhm.
And there's if you haven't seen the Hollywood depiction of his life, the Tolkien
Mhm.
movie. It's worth seeing. I'm sure they've trumped it up for Hollywood purposes, but there was still the impacts of World War I on this author who went on a
Mhm.
journey and changed, and so he
Mhm.
knew it. He had lived it, and there's something to write what you know, and write what you you, you can experience, even if it's a fantastical world that you make up. It still was anchored,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
and Harry
That's a
Potter's
great
anchored too.
answer. Yeah.
You got a cloak of invisibility, but that still goes back down to the human experience of ethics. What do you do when you're invisible? Are you
Yeah.
the same
Mm.
person when you're invisible?
That
And
brings to mind the movie Hollow Man. Did you ever see that?
and the
No.
just the whole aspect of what can you get away with when nobody's watching
Yeah.
or nobody can see. It's a
And
it's a
just to
human
remind
thing.
everybody, sorry, just to remind everybody, I am going to be at the Superstars Writing conference in Colorado, uh, the 9th through the 11th. I'm going to be teaching 2 classes. One is on marketing, and the other is, well, one is on developing your own brand, and the other is on how to basically build your own writing career. So definitely, if you haven't signed up, definitely check it out. If you can't go this year, definitely think about going next year. There, it's just the instructors are absolutely phenomenal. So totally keep that in mind. for the
Oh,
future. So
I'd like to announce something too.
sure.
Okay. Just let everybody know that sometime in the next 3 days, I'll be 6 blocks from my house at the neighborhood Kroger.
Mm.
I only bring that up to show you just how freaking advanced Lisa is. Her
Oh, give me a
announcements,
break.
these places she goes and these things she does, isn't that awesome? You know, I feel so boring. I'm going to go to
No,
Kroger's.
I, hey man, I went to Trader Joe's so I could have some homemade tacos after this. So uh,
Trader Joe's has the best cheesecake. Have you ever had that little cheesecake that doesn't cost hardly nothing and it's mouth-watering? It's so good.
no, and now I really won't because then I'll become addicted to it. There are certain stores I go to that I know if I buy something, I'm gonna eat it. And I don't mean I'm
Uh-huh.
just gonna eat like what they say is a serving. I am going to eat the whole thing. So there are several things that
Uh-huh.
I just don't buy because I know what'll happen. So
I'm still to a degree a 5-year-old, but all the way back to when I was a 5-year-old, I've always
mhm.
been called a goody gobbler. I love bakery goods and cakes and pies and all those yummies.
Yeah,
I don't eat as
cool.
many as I used to, but I love them. During our conversation, something came to mind, and I'm wondering what you might think would be the issue. Is since I started writing and started getting on social media and various things, I'd say I've interacted with roughly 100 authors. And based on your conversations over several shows, you've pointed out many times that in today's market, the author has to be willing to do a little bit of marketing on their own to promote themselves and their book. And I was, thinking about that, and I browse around the various social media sites, and I know a lot of these guys pretty well. And you either don't see them at all, or if they show up at all, they're joining in the current gossip about, this writer picked on this reviewer, or perhaps they're telling you about what something their kid did. But you know what's really rare, at least as far as I can reach on, Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, it seems really rare that a writer is trying to put their writer brand out there. Do you think it's just a simple matter that they don't know it's necessary? What do you think it is that writers? I even have spoken face to face with writers that felt, oh, I don't need to do that. And you've made the point several times that it's actually a very good idea to try to promote yourself and your book. So what's missing? Why is it that it appears a lot of writers just don't know it or don't care?
And Ben, what do you think?
I think it's a wide range of personality of the writer,
Mm,
and some writers write, and that's what they do, and that's what they know, and then that business end of it is a mystery, and instead of taking the time to work out that mystery, they go back and write, and very satisfied that their book is in the world, and if it's discovered, it's discovered. If it's not, it's in the world. And
Mhm.
but the other end of that is the personality that I want to support. This book deserves my support, and I'm going to get it out there every chance I can. I saw Khalid is with us, or was with us tonight. He's very good at marketing far out. He's done some great stuff to get that
mhm,
that book in the hands of reviewers and in the mindset of or the minds of potential readers. And he's
mhm,
very comfortable with it. He's very good at it. And so I don't think you can say, well, this personality has to change and do this, or
mhm.
that personality has to change and not do that. So because it's that wide range that you're working with, and it's for the publishers say, yeah, get out there and market it, because they've got a different mindset about it, and it's understandable. That's two different, like we talked about already tonight. That's two different perspectives on the same book of what
Mhm.
it's about. Was it about the writing and the finishing and the creative nature of being an author, or was it about the selling of books and the business nature of a publisher? And
Oh,
there's a big difference that comes together in the middle somewhere. And some authors are more um, willing to meet the publisher in the middle, and some publishers some books require the publishers to push a little bit more and say,
Mhm.
meet me here, and that's the marketing sheet that we use. You tell us where we can help you, and that's meeting in the middle, and
Mhm.
that's some authors are better at. Like I said, they're better at it than others.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything Ben said. And by the way, meet me in the middle does not mean can you get me a full page ad in, USA Today, or it does not mean hey, I saw this author had a billboard in Beverly Hills. Can you get me that? And we've had one author who was so adamant about it that she actually was like, well, fine, if you won't do it, I'm out of here. And I went, okay, because you know that's basically my my rent for 3 months if we did that, and I like having a home, so no. That's you're welcome to go ahead and do it yourself, but so there's got to be some a little bit, not a little bit, you got to be realistic as well in terms of what your requests are. But to go back to, I think, Ben's original point, some authors, it's they're just clueless and they don't know where to go, and we provide a ton of tools to help authors with that. Anything from, we ran a couple of workshops on how to develop marketing and how to execute that marketing. We actually provide a ton of templates and training materials and so on, so that it's not a black box, right? So that they can move forward with greater confidence. And we also are know some publicists who are pretty fabulous that we can point the author to. But for some authors, they don't care. I mean, all they want is they only are really interested in getting their stories out into the market. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And once upon a time, you know they couldn't even self-publish, right? So they were really their hands were tied. They may be able to write brilliantly, but you know no one would pick them up, and they couldn't self-publish. So but that now, thankfully, we've got self-publishing, right? You've got small publishers, you've got mid-size, you have large, and so there's a variety of choices, and you just need to decide. And this is one thing in both my, building your writing career class as well as in the branding. You need to decide what you want, right? Before you actually start putting your name out there, decide what's your goal, what's your objective in this. And that will help you figure out, if your goal is simply, look, I just want to write and get my story out there, then why do you care if you're with a publisher? You go ahead, self-publish. It's not a big deal, right? Not anymore. I mean, there's a lot to it, don't get me wrong. And it depends on the quality you want and everything else. If you want to become the biggest, best known romance writer on the planet, all right, then go research the best selling romance publishers, figure out what the formula is that those books are using, because believe me, they're all formula based. And then you write like that. And then you approach agents. And again, you do your homework and you figure out what agents represent those kinds of romance stories. And then you go out and you pitch to have them pitch your stories to those publishers. So, and I mean, I'm oversimplifying this, obviously, right? There's a whole lot more to it, but it really is, it's just understanding, what is it that you really want and figuring that out. And a lot of times, you know, what happens is, well, I can't say a lot of times, but sometimes what happens as well is someone will write something that it's their life work, right? It's their true passion, and all they know is, damn it, this is fantastic, right? Like, this is the best thing I've ever written. I am absolutely a true genius. The challenge is that if no one else thinks that, and no one knows that it exists, then you could be a genius, but if no one knows that it exists, then it doesn't matter, right?
Hmm.
Or again, it goes back to what was your purpose of to actually write the piece. So, you know, you have to figure out, like, where does this fit? What niche does this fit in? You know, who are your most likely uh audiences? Who are your most likely readers? Because the more specific you can get in that, the more likely you're going to sell it, the more likely you're going to find your fans. So, back to the epic fantasy thing, there actually absolutely is a correlation between fans of like epic fantasy and people who like to do things like cosplay or go to comic cons, right? Or, you need to figure out what are those ties? Where can you more directly go and find your reader, and then get your tushy there and get those flyers out there, right? Give sample short stories to them so that they get to know who you are and know that you exist. And that's how you build a fan base. You don't build a fan base by just doing broad stroke, look, I'm fabulous, everybody, whole world, look how fabulous I am, right? You really find those raging fans by seeking out where they are and letting them know that you exist. So,
And it's
Caroline says, sorry, go ahead.
well, it's just from the poet's perspective. If a book of poems sells 1,000 copies, that's a million. That's a million copy seller anywhere else.
Oh
And
yeah.
and LinkedIn is full of global book marketers and promotion people that will offer you all kinds of stuff. Um, they'll, they'll search your profile and say, "I want to connect," because you're an author. I want to connect, so I always connect with them because misery loves company, and and so it's I tell them if I'm getting $2 a book that for every book that sells of say Always Ready,
Mm-hmm.
and it sells I get $2 for every sale it makes, and then I give you so if it sells 1,000, I get $2,000, and if
Mm-hmm.
I give you 1,500 to market it, I've already cheated myself, and I
Right.
explain that business into them, and they say, oh yeah, good point. Let us know if you write anything else.
Well,
I will
But it's
say,
fun to tag them along.
but to Ben's point, also, guys, be careful when you're getting approached by marketers and
Mhm,
publicists. Ask them what kind of sales have they seen for previous clients. Ask them a couple of authors that you can approach who they could talk to understand, what their experience was in working with them. Because a lot of these guys, they may be good at, like, I actually did, again, learning curve, and we only have 3 minutes left, so but real fast, we had 4 books that were named to the best of the year by Kirkus Review, and I was so blown away, I was so overjoyed. I actually hired a publicist for all 4 authors, and they all went on these huge tours, and I'm not going to tell you how much I spent, but I spent a pretty penny on this. So I didn't go as far as putting out a second mortgage, but let's just say we almost went there.
oh,
Um, so what happened was they got great. They got on radio shows and on regional TV shows and all kinds of magazines and newspapers and so on. It barely affected sales.
mhm,
Now, these authors all became much better well known, and those who then were able to publish books within like 2 or 3 books after that, within a relative, like within like 5 years, their sales did have an uptick. Like that was noticeable. But in the immediate, it wasn't like they got on their local NPR and all of a sudden it sold, tons of
mhm,
stories. That did not happen. So really be careful and find out have them quantify for you what kind of return they were able to provide, to Ben's point, right? to those
Mhm.
authors. So, and then with that, I think Caroline's just commenting. Some writers are total introverts. Thankfully, I'm not, but I understand. That worked years ago if you were a brilliant writer and a big company picked you up, one of the big five, but not today. That is pretty much nailing it. So, and with that, we are actually over time. I'm so sorry, guys. Thank you again for all the fantastic questions. We all obviously just went off on tangents.
We
Looking
do.
forward to seeing you now next week. I will actually be joining you from the Superstars Writing Conference. So, looking
Oh,
forward to seeing you there. And again, have a fantastic week.